Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Coyote in the kitchen right now. I wanted to talk a little bit about healing and diet. So the healing part is just a setup, okay? I am involved with a large group of dogs and their owners at the current moment in time. Like, there's just suddenly a social thing has coalesced, and there's depending on the day and which dogs and stuff, we're talking 35, 40 different dogs with associated owners who all have their internal conflicts, and everything seems to be working relatively well in terms of focusing on the dogs. But of course, you have different beliefs about dogs. There are, a lot of people who think that you can train a dog to not sniff the grass and pee. Like this is how dogs behave. There are a lot of people trying to train against canine psychology, and I am training some people to accept that dogs have a certain way and that they are going to jump on each other. There's going to be the occasional growl and snap without injury. There's the occasional no, not there, because they do have a social structure, and they have a way of expressing their social structure. You have to allow them to express it. Overall, it's been a fantastic group. There are very few problems. There's notably one guy who hasn't made the connection in his head that all the other dogs are drinking out of water bowls, shared water bowls. Like, we all just bring a little thing, we set it on the ground. Everyone's fine. Everyone's hydrated. The dogs are rarely out there for more than 45 minutes. It's not like people are a little crazy about this. The dogs can go 2 hours without drinking. Okay. But this one guy, he's got a water bottle trick he's training. If any dog gets near his dog while his dog is drinking out of the water bottle, then that dog gets defensive and aggressive and snappy and protective and gets that food protection thing, and that can get ugly. It's gotten ugly a couple of times. Most recently it got ugly because one of the ladies stuck her hand in the faces of the two dogs, which is not how you separate. You don't separate dogs by the teeth. That's how you get bit. She did actually stick her hand in the mouth of a dog that was going like this and got bit. The dog did not bite her. She stuck her hand into a dog fight, and the dog in question that she was trying to stop, who was snapping at her dog, has a handle on his harness. So why did you stick your hand in his mouth? Things like that. And she's absolutely correct that this behavior should not be permitted to happen. Her reaction to it was completely batshit loopy. But I understand, that much that it shouldn't happen. And the thing about that is that this dog, it's a known behavior. If he's going to have water, put him on the leash for a moment. Put him on the leash, hold him down, whatever, give him a moment, take him away for a moment. If you feel that much that you need to give him water out of a water bottle, even though he's drinking out of the same dishes as the rest of the dogs with no problems, then separate him for that process. Really easy. This happens kind of constantly, and it's one of those, this is a training issue, but this has nothing to do with the healing. So anyway, overall, most of the time we're doing pretty well. I've had to do some education. For example, one of the dogs that I have done a little bit of work on, and this is energy healing. I don't know how to explain it. It's not quite laying on of hands stuff, but it is absolutely an intention-based healing. And some of the dogs, there are some people who are really, really impressed with, I'm not telling them I'm doing this, but there's some people who are really, really impressed with what their dogs are doing after a week playing with my puppy. Or a couple of days playing with my puppy. I get them together and I do my little thing, right? It's just an intention. I'm just like, hey, you need to feel better and get younger, right? Act younger. But so one of the owners with this, so the healing there, that's the woo part. I'm doing intention healing on the dogs. One of the owners of one of the dogs, after I started working on this, has been resisting the dietary changes for her dog that I talked about. She talked about, wow, healthy dog, how'd your lab live to 15, and why is your dog so energetic? And I'm like, well, because we feed an ancestrally species-appropriate diet, which is mostly raw meat. Some cooked meat. Actually, a lot of, at this point, it's mostly cooked meat because it's just eat with us, and we mostly eat cooked meat. I don't eat raw meat very often, very once in a great while. So what happens here is that she responds with this idea that she rescued the dog, and the dog was malnourished because she was eating out of the trash. She was eating raw stuff out of the trash cans behind a butcher shop. And that's what her previous owner fed her because it was free and it was obviously good for her. And I'm like, no. So she thinks that a meat-based diet for a dog is unhealthy because the stuff that cannot be served to humans or even made into dog food that's in the trash can at the back of a butcher shop in a recession when everyone is eating every part of the animal they can that is at all healthful. She thinks that means that meat is bad, and there are people who think that organ meats are the supreme healthy part of meat and everything else doesn't count. And that's absolutely wrong, 100% wrong. So we're going to get into animal nutrition. All of that set up, and we're going to talk about dogs. So what does your dog eat? Now, I want to, just as a general thing, don't get too heavy on this. I'm going to sound a little aggressive, but don't get too heavy on this. But if you don't feed a lot of table scraps and your dog basically eats dog food, what is your dog actually eating? Well, your dog is basically eating out of a can or a bag all the time. So I want you to imagine telling your kids that the healthiest way to eat is to eat Life cereal out of a box in the morning and canned chili for dinner. And that is it. No variation, nothing. No hamburgers, no hot dogs, no fresh meat, no anything. You're just cereal. Dry cereal. No milk or eggs, because if you add that, well, you've changed the nutrition profile. And canned chili. Except it's not good canned chili, it's the bad stuff. It's the 99-cent Walmart stuff. Okay, so that is basically what most people feed their dogs for their entire lives. And then people who care about their dogs avoid giving them table scraps and feed fancier $1.99 a can chili. That's what it is. It's just canned chili. And I'm sitting here thinking, it is not nutritious to live your life out of a can. There's no way that it is possibly nutritious and healthful to live your life out of a can. Okay? Bagged food isn't any better. This whole industry is just completely freaking broken. Alright, so depending on where you live and what the prices are and how it all works out and your dog's sensitivities, there are various options for this. Chicken quarters, that's 1/4 chickens, the thigh and the leg all mixed together, as a unit. That is actually a really good sometimes dog food. It's not good to live off of exclusively without any other treats or inputs, but it is actually, it's better than canned dog food depending on the chicken. Sometimes you can think of chicken as just walking corn at this point because it's force-fed a very restricted diet and so on and so forth. So, if you find whole chickens that are natural, pasture-raised, whatever, on sale, chop those things in half or into quarters or put them in a blender or whatever and feed that to the dog raw. They can eat raw chicken bones. Raw chicken bones are perfectly fine for dogs. Dogs eat raw animal bones in the wild. Period. They eat them when they're out there with people in the wild, in wild environments. That's fine. That's how it works. I tend to just avoid pork at this point, period. Commercialized pork, so whatever. If you get pasture-raised pork, there is obviously a thing with smaller dogs, be careful about the bones. With larger dogs, I don't care, There's a theory that the bones can splinter and stuff. I've never seen a problem with it, except in very small dogs that occasionally get a little stopped up and have a little bit of hard time pooping once in a while with cooked bones, or in the case of puppies, sometimes not chewing the bones sufficiently and getting a little stopped up at the front end. Not really choking to death, but getting a little stopped up. So that's the thing. But just, I want you to think about this, living out of off of canned food exclusively as an idea. Does that make sense to you? Does that make make sense to you? Or Life cereal. Like, how's that helpful? Chicken is the cheapest. What you really want is lamb, beef stuff. Lamb, beef, goat. And so for most people, most of the time, if you do have a local butcher shop, you'll be able to get dog scraps. They sell it, they know what it is, it's very good. It's going to have a lot of fat and a lot of meat and a lot of collagen. Collagen. Your dog needs collagen. Everyone out there with dogs that have the hips breaking down, I'm like, well, maybe you need to give the dog some more collagen. There are several dogs out there that, in addition to my whatever woo-woo efforts, are having noticeable improvements in coat and gait because I've convinced the owners to feed shanks. Like, go buy the soup bones and the shanks, and if you must cook them, it's fine. Dogs have been living with us for thousands and thousands of years. They have evolved to eat barbecue because that's what we evolved to eat, and I don't care how vegan or vegetarian you are, the evidence is pretty clear that the last million years humans have been mostly doing barbecue. Food, meat-based food cooked over a fire. That is we can survive on other stuff, but whenever we can, through all of human history, like I'm talking the entire species history, it's meat cooked over a fire. That is what we eat by preference. Sometimes it's fish cooked over a fire, but a lot of times when it comes to the fish, when you make that shift, it's not the little fish, it's bigger fish. It's salmon and mammals, seals, dolphins, whales, stuff. There's a lot of people don't really want to look at what seafood-based diets in human history actually look like because they look cute and bloody. But it's not just sardines, okay? It's a lot of salmon are pretty big fish, so that's a pretty decent one. But just think this stuff through a little bit. Your dog should not be living out of a can on a canned food diet. Get some, eggs are cheap. Good eggs are cheap. Good pastured, open air, not strictly corn-fed, free-range chicken eggs are still less than $5 a dozen. And if your dog gets an egg every day, that's going to make a world, just not cooked, just smash it in the food if you're using a canned food, shell and all. Some dogs just get eggs and eat them, over the food is good. Cook it, that's fine. We cook eggs, that's fine. Fried eggs with the shell in or without the shell, depends on your personal mental capacity to handle stuff. If you can't handle your dog having shell, then leave it out. That's not that big a deal. It's the yolk that's the big deal. You need the yolk. It has all the cholesterol and the collagens, all the stuff that you actually need to have healthy bones and joints and coat. So, feed your dog. Just, don't change everything. Add an egg a day, but add a good quality egg every day. Add a couple of shanks every week. Whenever you have steak, whenever you have any kind of meat, give the dog the bone, the cuttings, any part you don't like, any part that's too tough for you, feed that to your dog. And get rid of the breads and the rices and the grains and the stuff that comes in cans and bags. Please, for the love of your animal, do that. Now, I'm not going to ask you. Dogs and humans share a lot of nutritional needs because we are symbiotic. I'm not going to ask you to apply this lesson to your children yet. I'm not going to ask you to apply this lesson to yourself yet. But at least for your dog, consider that they're not really built to live out of a can and just off processed food. Stay sideways.